Okay, everybody in the East Bay. I am so thrilled to have the people here. We got a meeting that you guys aren't going to believe. We get to share space with Pamela Price, our esteemed district attorney. And unfortunately, we have to hear about the problems she's having and request of us of how we can help her. Then we're going to go on and have a panel. The other night, Alameda County Democratic Central Committee had a vote on a resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza, and it totally passed. There was some question if it was going to be voted on, but it did pass. And so we're going to have a panelist. We have 4 people here. Joanna Chukalava, Austin Tam, David Weintraub, and Clyde Leland, who are going to be the panel. And then Mark Van Landet, an ORAB member, is going to moderate the questions. And we have 4 or 5 questions that we'll be asking everybody. And then we'll be getting some questions from a special guest, Eliza Kazam. And she actually helped write this also. Maybe some of you know her, I don't know her, but she's very informed on what's happening. Okay, so we were supposed to have Igor here to start, and I don't see him. So with that, we're going to move along. We got a lot to deal with, and one of the co-chairs of our revolution, Sherry Johansson, is going to introduce Pamela. Go for it.
Thank you all for being here, and especially thank you, Pamela, for joining us. We are honored to have the Alameda County District Attorney, Pamela Price, join us today. After winning the election last November with overwhelming support from the voters of Alameda County, and the victory was also for justice reform, including reducing juvenile incarceration, stopping the playground to prison pipeline, building community resources to reduce the root causes of crime in Alameda County, fair and equitable administration of justice. All of that takes time. However, the backers of her opponent wasted no time in pouring thousands of dollars into their campaign to reverse the results of the election. Meanwhile, our district attorney has kept her promises by increasing the number of advocates for victims by almost 35%, obtaining a $2 million grant for an organized retail theft vertical prosecution team, a new prosecution unit to address the growing issue of organized crime in the community, and much, much more. We are so honored to welcome our district attorney, Pamela Price. Pamela?
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, our revolution. Hi. I am so honored to be here and so grateful to you all for making time for me in what is a very important meeting in a very important time, and really appreciate the support that I've always had in this organization. You all adopted me early on. You knew I was not a Bernie Crat in 2016. In 2016, I was still learning and doing my research about the Democratic Party. I ran for the Central Committee in 2016 and got the highest number of votes of anyone across the county, and was promptly told I was not welcome at that body at the table. They were like, who is she? Who told her she could come here? And they were very unfriendly to me my first term as your representative on the Alameda County Democratic Party Central Committee. And so we decided in 2020, Jeremy Schaefer and I got the idea, well, if we run a slate of progressives across the county, that could change the look and the feel and the direction of the Alameda County Democratic Party. And so we did that. And someone said to me Wednesday night, the People Power Progressives own that victory, because it was because of the efforts of the People Power Progressives in 2020 that ran a full slate of candidates across the county, that won in places that people didn't think we were going to win. Paola Laverde came in as our #1 candidate from Berkeley, and she was not expected to win. So we had the joy of election night.
I'm gonna put on my little headset, so I'll be able to hear you as well. And
watching Paola pull ahead and grab a seat on the Democratic Party Central Committee. And so I am honored to be here with you tonight. I'm excited to be, I've always been grateful to be living at this time of our history. As a child of the 60s, living the legacy and fulfilling the dream of Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King and so many people that died for civil rights and for social justice and kicked off so many other movements. I've always been honored to stand in solidarity, not just with the Palestinian people, but with the Native American people, with indigenous peoples, with the disability movement, with so many movements that I understood, the LGBTQ movement, so many movements that I understood had their roots in what was done on behalf of the liberation of Black people. And so I've always been honored to be part of that and to be living in this time. And this is exciting now to see what many of you on this call have done, how many millions of people around the world in this season are calling for peace is so inspiring. And I know y'all didn't put me on the panel, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that, but I just want to be able to put what happened and what is happening in Alameda County in context, okay? In 2020, we ran a countywide corporate-free grassroots campaign, and we won. And we took a huge step forward for Alameda County because, as you all know, I'm the first non-anointed, non-appointed district attorney in this county in 100 years. And so a lot, that's, you know, the blessing of the history, the burden of it is that so many people had no clue what the district attorney does, what that office does. We didn't know all the things that were happening in the office, and all the things that need to be fixed. I mean, those of us on the outside fighting for criminal justice reform, we know, you know, you can know what's wrong on the outside, but when you get on the inside, and now we are in there, and we're trying to fix, so the system is far more broken than anything we ever imagined. But it's a great opportunity. When I was elected, we said, this is an opportunity for us to reset everything. We get to reset the relationship that this office has with the community. We get to reset the relationship the office has with law enforcement. We get to reset the priorities internally. We get to reset what has not been serving the residents of this county for many, many, many decades. And so I'm honored to serve as your district attorney and to be all about doing the job that I'm doing, keeping my promises. I didn't make those promises lightly. They came from a lifetime of struggle, a lifetime of witnessing and experiencing oppression. And so I understand deeply the things that we are fighting for and that we have to change. And that's where we are now. We are in the midst of a great change in Alameda County. Obviously, we're in the midst of a great deal of turmoil in our country. And so it's an exciting time that we are just, you think about it. I mean, I was in 2020 part of the ad hoc coalition against racism and police brutality. And we saw the largest demonstration in Oakland at the starting from the Port of Oakland and going downtown. It was absolutely amazing that people came out for that. And then, you know, we've since then, so we've all lived that, right? And now we're living in another moment of intense activism and a drive for humanity. Really, that's what this is about. And so every day that I get to go to work as a district attorney, I know that I am striving to improve our criminal justice system so that the humanity of people is not forgotten. And that was our hallmark, was justice with compassion. And it's not people, it is justice for everyone who is impacted by the criminal justice system. Compassion, whether you are the victim, and I know what it is to represent victims and to be a victim, whether you are the family of someone who is suffering with mental illness or addiction, or the family member of someone who has caused somebody else great harm, or whether you're the person who has caused someone great harm. All of that. And I take very seriously as well my mandate as the leader of that organization to take care of the people who work there. My first day, we had this storm that was coming from Hawaii or somewhere, and I, as the executive, had to advise 400 and plus employees, I need you to go home, like right now, okay? Because there's a storm coming that potentially could cause all of us harm. That was my first day on the job. And so I understood very immediately that I was the leader of the organization, that I had an obligation to look out for the interest of every person that works there, and to make the organization better, and to create a safe and productive workplace for everyone, because that's how we serve the residents of Alameda County. So it has been a chore. And as Sherry pointed out, from day one, there were people who woke up and said, "Oh my God, what happened? There's a Black woman in charge in Alameda County. Oh my God, what happened?" And you all may have heard me say during the race that the residents of Contra Costa County elected a Black woman as the district attorney, and the sky did not fall. In Alameda County, there are people who thought the sky fell the day that I walked into that office. And those folks have, from that day until now, been spreading false narratives, creating false images, doing everything they can to overturn the results of the election. And that's unfortunate, because one of the things that I'm very prideful about as a citizen, as a resident, as a human being, is trying to be on the right side of history. I feel like I've been on the right side of history. When I stood up for women at Yale and became the lead plaintiff in Title IX, I stood up on the right side of history. I knew that I was on the right side of history. I wasn't standing alone, but when you're the face of something like today, people kind of focus on you. But I've had the blessing of having been in that position before as the lead plaintiff in Alexander versus Yale, and understanding that this movement, this struggle, is not about me. I'm just, at this moment, I get to be the face of it. And so when you all endorsed me in 2018, and then again in 2021, you were on the right side of history. And as we continue to reform and to work through this first year of my tenure, because it has not been a year yet. It's okay. As we work through this, we're on the right side of history. When history is written and our children look back and say, what did they do in 2022? They're going to know that we did the right thing. And the people who are against us, who are driving this recall, who have their faces out there, Brittany Grisham, Carl Chan, the deputies who left my office, ran to go be part of the recall movement, they're on the wrong side of history. And I'm confident of that. I'm confident that we're going to defeat this effort, that they're going to find there's quite a few hurdles, both legal and practical, to what they're trying to do. And the reality is it's never been done before. But that's, this is where we are right now. So, but we're not taking it lightly. We cannot. We can never take the forces of evil and those who want to turn back the hands of time or have undermined the progress, the forward progress of people. We can't take that lightly. And so, yes, we are calling for volunteers and for people to stand with us to protect the win. We won. Let's be clear. We won. And we won because the people of Alameda County were ready for a change, because they understood that our system was broken, that we didn't have accountability of law enforcement, particularly our sheriff. If we look at what happened in the sheriff election, where an unknown officer, manager in the sheriff's department was able to unseat and sweep unceremoniously Sheriff Greg Ahern from that seat. That tells us that the people were listening, that they heard and they understood the problems with the jail, that they heard and understood in my election the problems with our criminal justice system, and that they demanded a change. That has not changed. The opposition has galvanized itself, has, organized themselves. They've raised over $500,000, most of it, and they didn't raise it. They were already putting that money together in February, right? And so we know that they are very serious about what they're trying to do. And so we have to be very serious about what we are trying to do, which is to advance the human rights and the dignity of every resident of Alameda County in this season. Absolutely so. And it's not pretty. It's not easy, but it has to be done. And we're committed to doing that. And I appreciate again that you all have been standing with me from day one. And we will continue to stand. In this season, we're calling for volunteers to help us protect the win. We are launching the Protect the Win campaign on November the 16th. And so we'll put it up on the website tonight. Please, please, please come join us on November 16th at 6 o'clock in downtown Oakland. We're asking everybody to come. We gotta come together. We need people to sign up, because what we're seeing, the $500,000 is paid, signature gatherers, and they're using every trick in the book. And I don't want to talk too long, but they are deceiving our family, our friends, and our neighbors. And so we have to protect and defend our democracy. And that's the call to action, is that we need democracy defenders to come do election protection, to go to that Safeway, to go to Target and Walmart and Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and talk to our neighbors and friends and tell them that what these people are telling you is not true. They have been trying to overturn this election since day one. We need to move forward. And so on that note, I'm going to let it go. I appreciate, again, the time. I appreciate your commitment, not only to justice here at home, but to justice internationally. Certainly, we condemn the slaughter of babies and the rape of women and war crimes. War in and of itself, to me, is a crime. But certainly the kind of atrocities that we've seen by Hamas is totally unacceptable. At the same time, I have known, and if you don't know, in 1975, the UN declared Zionism as racism. And we knew then that Israel was on the wrong side of history. And I've not forgotten that Israel funded apartheid. I'll never forget that, the state of Israel. I also won't forget, and I glossed over this, the Democratic Party. Thank you all for continuing to be part of our revolution, to challenge the Democratic Party in Alameda County and nationally to be relevant to where we are. It is a fight. I've touched on it a little bit, but let's not be deceived, okay? Our local party is full of people who are not really Democrats or who are committed to a different agenda. And we should not forget that Eric Swalwell spent $80,000 to support my opponent, to preserve the status quo. We should not forget that Nate Miley spent $50,000 to support my opponent, to preserve the status quo. So when you see us fighting at that Democratic Party Central Committee, understand that we are fighting for a progressive agenda that is not yet embedded in the party, and that there are people who are in power that are not committed to that progressive agenda, no matter what they may say nationally, okay? What you don't forget what they say, watch what they do, okay? And I will always stand with you and hopefully will always be on the right side of history. Thank you so much for listening and for giving me this space. Appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you so
Pamela,
much. That was
go
just
ahead.
great. And I was, I actually had the opportunity for Madam District Attorney to pull me into the Central Committee when we were quite the minority, and it has made a difference. So I was like, why would I want to do this? And she said, you have no choice. You've got to do this. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate all that she's done to be on the right side of history. And now, Carol, do you want to introduce our next segment? And
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Pamela. We always love it when you're here, and we're so committed. I had to deal with some of those people today out at the market, Temescal Market, that we're trying to get people to sign for the recall. It is not pleasant. Anyway, so we're going to move on now. Igor did show up, yay. And so we're going to have him do a 2-minute announcement because he won't be able to be giving an announcement at the end of the meeting because he won't be here. That's usually when we do announcements. And then we're going to immediately get into the panel. Okay, Igor, do you want to speak, please?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Our Revolution, for always speaking truth to power. And thank you, Madam DA Price. Know that the Alameda County Democratic Party is with you and is committed to protecting the win. We'll be joining you on the front lines of protecting our democracy. I am here to talk to you about another attack on democracy, an attack by PG&E and the investor-owned utility monopoly that are going after renters, schools, farms, health centers, resiliency hubs, anyone with multiple electrical meters. And they're saying because renters are able to save as much as $60 a month through rooftop solar, and the utilities model is based on maximum profit, a guaranteed 8 to 12% profit a year, they're trying to take away this opportunity from the most vulnerable, marginalized folks to be able to own a little bit of the sun. The sun should belong to we the people, not the investor-owned utility monopoly. If you agree, I'm going to put in the chat a few actions that it would be an honor if you could take them with me over the next 2 weeks. The California Public Utilities Commission has ignored thousands of comments from elected officials at every level, from
20 seconds.
organizations, and from many others. And yet, because we have brought this fight to their doorstep and to the governor's doorstep, they have once again extended the vote for the third time. The vote will now take place Thursday, November 16th. The first action you can take is to call the governor. The governor's phone lines are open 9 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. I put a script in the chat that you can use. If you still have more time after that, you can make public comment at the California Public Utilities Commission site. I will drop the link on that. There have been over 1,000 comments. Let's keep making sure they hear from we the people. And lastly, on November 16th at 11 a.m., please join me in, again, taking this matter of democracy, not corporatocracy, to the doorstep of the California Public Utilities Commission as they are poised to vote. Let's make sure they vote with the people, not the utilities which have captured them so far. But for
Thank you.
thank you so much. All clean power to the people.
Yeah, thank you, Igor. We have a tight schedule tonight. I know we usually give you a little longer, and we need to get moving into the panel.
Igor, put that date into the chat.
Okay, guys. We're gonna start with the panel now. And Mark Van Landen, who I first met back in 2016 when he had just returned from Philadelphia as a Bernie delegate. And I've been impressed with him in all that he has done since then. So, and he's part of the OREB board, and he's going to be the moderator tonight. Go for it, Mark.
Thank you, Carol. I just want to reconfirm what Pamela Price just said. What the right-wing interests are trying to do is they're trying to circumvent democracy. Pamela Price has not even been in office an entire year. And these right-wing interests don't know what they're playing with. Never underestimate Pamela Price. She has the community with her. She has the truth with her. And she has all of us with her. So I just want to remind people of that November 16th date for Pamela Price. Onto the panel. This is an extraordinarily challenging historical moment we are in. This is a moral crisis of foreign policy, of national policy, of military power. Pamela was talking about being on the right side of history. History is going to ask us, where were we when these events were unfolding? We're going to get into the discussion with four fantastic panelists. But first, a few ground rules. And I want to thank Sherry for helping draft these ground rules. So this is a heated topic. This is an emotional topic. There are different perspectives that I want all of us to respect. There will likely be disagreement. I don't care. We're still going to treat each other as friends, as equals, as comrades, and as family, okay? So the ground rules are: be considerate, respectful when speaking and listening. Speak to the issues, no personal attacks. Argue the point. If you have already spoken, step back, let others speak. Try to limit your questions and statements to 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, just to give fair time for everybody to be part of the discussion. Be sure to keep your audio muted when others are speaking. No derogatory remarks in the chat, please. And this is the tough one. Any form of hate speech will be grounds for ejection from the meeting, which reminds me of Oscar Wilde's line, "The one thing I can't tolerate is intolerance." So please, this is going to be a serious discussion about something that has just unfolded here in Alameda County. And the people that we're going to have to speak about this, we have with us Ioana Toklava, who is an attorney, an activist. She's a fellow of the Equal Justice Society. She is part of the Restorative Justice Unit at the San Francisco District Attorney's Office. We have David Weintraub, who we know him as one of the main movers and shakers at our sister organization, the Wellstone Democratic Renewal Club. Clyde Leland, award-winning singer, songwriter. He is one of the directors for the Bay Area Jewish Voice for Peace. And our friend Austin Tam, who's a California Democratic Party delegate for the Alameda County area. Our friend and a staunch supporter of Palestinian human rights. And with this introduction, I'm going to open it up to everybody with this question, since this is now something that has been accomplished. Tell everyone about the Alameda County Democratic Central Committee resolution, and tell me about the main points and why it's important. And for those who don't know, tell people what a Democratic Central Committee is. I open it up to anyone who wants to take that. All right, we got shy panelists here.
I'm happy to start, although I might need a little more than 2 minutes to explain all of that. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ioana Toklava once again. I want to apologize if I'm a little bit off today. I just broke my toe and I'm still in a lot of pain. And this pain that I'm feeling is actually making me think about even deeper about the pain that our relatives in Palestine are feeling, both children and adults, and experiencing things that are much more unimaginable than my broken toe. And ultimately, this is what this is for me. It's about recognizing that Palestinian lives matter. And it's been crazy for me to see, as somebody who was not born in this country, I'm Bulgarian, that in this country, there's recognition and care for the lives of Israeli people, which is appropriate and important, but there hasn't been recognition and care for the lives of Palestinians. And so for me as a Bulgarian woman, I cannot stand still, and I need to call out what needs to be called out and try to be part of the change. So the Alameda County Democratic Central Committee is the most local body of the Alameda County, and it was after a big fight on Wednesday, November 1st. A resolution that Austin, Soli, and I was adopted by the committee. I think you've all seen the language. I just posted the link in the chat. And if I was given a little bit more time, I'd like to speak to the parts of the resolution that were most important to me. Is that okay, Mark?
Absolutely. Please go ahead. Gordon, let's give her 3 minutes to elucidate on the resolution.
Okay.
Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you so much. And it may be appropriate for this time if you all want to actually share the language of the resolution on the screen so that people can see directly. But the pieces of the resolution that were most important to me was the language that we added about, one, the war crime of collective punishment that Israel is engaging in right now, right? There was a crime that was committed by Hamas, and then the response has been completely disproportionate, even by any standards of self-defense. To punish an entire group of people is collective punishment. It is a war crime. Secondly, adding the language about committing acts of genocide and ethnic cleansing by international law, and I am actually an attorney who studied international human rights law for many years, to try to destroy a group of people in whole or in part is genocide. And this is exactly what the state of Israel is doing right now by bombing people in Gaza. And then to try to displace them to a different country is ethnic cleansing, which is also what the state of Israel is engaged in right now. Thirdly, it was really important for me, and I actually added this language about recognizing the history and the context within which the current conflict is taking place. And that is a long history of military occupation and an apartheid system of laws and practices that serves to fragment, oppress, and dispossess Palestinians, and has done so for decades now. Fourthly, in the resolved clauses, and again, we had to keep this resolution to one page, so we couldn't add everything that we wanted, calling out and specifically naming that our Central Committee advocates for the dignity, safety, and equality of all people, regardless of religion or race, and opposes, yes, not only racism, which we need to oppose, and anti-Semitism, which we also need to oppose, but also Islamophobia and colonialism and ethno-nationalism in all of their forms, and that we stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people at this time. And then lastly, the rest of the resolve clauses, the pieces that were really important to me, in addition to calling for an immediate ceasefire and humanitarian assistance going into Gaza, as well as the restoration of food, water, fuel, and electricity and medicine, and the release of all hostages held by Hamas and by Israel, calling for an end to all U.S. military aid to Israel. Right, for years, the United States has been giving $3.4 billion to Israel every year. And right now, Congress is considering giving an additional $14 billion to Israel every year.
30 seconds.
Our taxpayer dollars are being used to support the state of Israel in committing more crimes than we can actually list on a single piece of paper and a single resolution. So from our perspective, this is the strongest resolution ever passed by an elected body of the Democratic Party in the country. If you have other language that is stronger, please do let us know. But again, I just want to name that it is the community who made this resolution possible. I'm not an expert on this issue, but Eliza and others who are here are experts. So I'm excited you also get to hear from them. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We're going to let Eliza ask some questions before we go to public questions from the audience. I was just wondering, so what obstacles did all of you face getting this resolution passed? And these obstacles, how did you overcome them? Austin, go ahead. Panelists, all join in. Panelists, all join in. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much. There's not one thing in this resolution. Obviously, the apartheid issue, the one about the West Bank, about the settlers attacking the people in West Bank while we're being distracted in Gaza, and also the billions of dollars being spent, the U.S. being spent in Israel. You know, as some of you might not have known, I introduced a resolution on Palestine, which was the strongest at the time in 2022. I was attacked by myself because I introduced it by myself, but I got help from other people, especially Palestinian people and people who are living this genocide. It was difficult because at the end of the day, you know, that resolution in 2022 passed by 19 votes. This resolution passed by 17 votes, and it was difficult. There's only nine pro-Palestinian supporters on the Central Committee. Pretty much that's the ones you can count on for anything regarding Palestine, but it was very difficult because there's a lot of lobbying. There's lobbying from JCRC, and I'm going to call them out too, and APAC and everything else. And there's a lot of pressure because people are scared. But let me tell you, the 3 elected members who represent us, Pamela Drake, Madam DA Pamela Drake, as Assembly Alex Lee, Supervisor Alyssa Marquez, and Victor Aguilar Jr., who are the 4 elected members representing as politicians who voted for it. So I just want to say, you know, that's the, you know, the pressures from the outside, from the outside. Thank you so much.
Austin, you said pressure from the outside. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, you know, just like how Representative Rashida Tlaib is getting attacked from AIPAC, $100,000 are getting thrown in to defeat her because she's called for a ceasefire, and she's called for the oppression that the Palestinian people have been facing. And let me tell you, the 17 of us will not, and I'm speaking for myself, I will not be bullied. I'm running for re-election in March 5th. I will not be bullied. We are spending $2 billion a day on the genocide of people in Palestine and Gaza. And there's blood on our hands, and there's ethnic genocide going on. We have not learned from history. 75 years ago, it didn't start on October 7th. It started 75 years ago. I would not be bullied by AIPAC or JCRC or some of these people on this call that might be bullying other people. Because let me tell you, there's infiltrators everywhere, but let me tell you, I will not be bullied. We will not be bullied. And the fact is, we are gaining momentum. People are speaking out that would never have been speaking out from the beginning. Celebrities, artists, congressional members, even Representative Nydia Velázquez from New York, who doesn't speak out on nothing about Palestine. She co-sponsored the ceasefire. And Representative Al Green of Texas, who voted against the resolution, that was the 1 out of 23 people who spoke out against the resolution, against the military weapons going to Israel on Friday. And so we need to wake up, because let me tell you, 2024 is going to be a tough year. But Palestine now is the litmus test for all of us, especially regarding to myself. That is a litmus test. I will not vote for anyone that's anti-Palestinian. So thank you for this. Thank you for being on the right side of history, our revolution, and thank you for having the courage to have us speak today.
Austin, your passion does not go unnoticed by anybody, and anyone attempting to bully you would be foolish. Oana, I see that your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I just want to add a little bit to Austin's answer to the process question, right? What obstacles we faced along the way. And first, I want to give a shout out to Austin, because he's the reason, right, why this resolution is here and we were able to pass it. It was Austin who had put together the first draft of the language of a resolution that I saw very shortly before the deadline to submit a resolution to the Resolutions Committee on the Wednesday before last Wednesday. I worked to make that language stronger, and then I was invited by the chair to work on a separate resolution, And I said I was willing to do so under the impression that multiple resolutions could be considered, because I didn't want a resolution to pass that may be much weaker and that will not have strong enough language in support of the Palestinian people. And I found out that I was completely wrong, and there was a rule that was evoked that only one resolution on a particular subject would be allowed to be considered by the resolutions committee and then considered by the party itself. I named very strongly in my conversations that I think that rule is a problematic, and that there's no reason why multiple resolutions cannot be considered on a single subject, and why the party should not be allowed to vote on our resolution. At the Sunday Resolutions Committee hearing, which was last Sunday, a week from, wow, it's been only a week, it feels like ages. There were hundreds of community members who came out in support of the resolution Austin and I had written. And this is why the Resolutions Committee was not able to, quote unquote, pass or support the separate resolution that was on the table, which was much weaker. There's a separate rule, which I also think is problematic, that any chair of the Resolutions Committee can amend, change the language, combine any resolutions as they wish. And it was only because hundreds of community members showed up at that hearing, and then at a separate hearing, which was a Tuesday, the night before the actual ACDCC meeting, that our resolution was even allowed to be considered and given a chance to be voted on by the party on Wednesday. And then even then, and up until the last minute at the ACDCC meeting, a member of the party moved for the vote to be postponed until January. So we had to have a debate on that motion and a full roll call vote on that motion before we could even have a debate and a roll call on our resolution. So from all of these pieces were incredibly difficult to navigate. I'm very new to this process. I was confused about parts of it in the beginning. There was, from trying to consolidate resolutions to keeping us in suspense to moving to postpone the resolution, it was really clear that there was a desire for this resolution to not even be sent out to the full body for consideration and for a vote.
Well, I want to thank you for that. You'll find with the party, once you've mastered the rules and bylaws, they've changed them. So it's always a moving target. I want to bring in David Weintraub and Clyde Leland and just ask, where does the resolution go from here? And what are you asking of the community, of organizers, of people who care about this issue? So David, I'll start with you and then go to Clyde.
Yeah, I first of all want to say thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. Thank you, Our Revolution, for consistently standing up for the rights of the most vulnerable in our society and against the profiteers who are running our society. And this is one piece of a much larger struggle that we are all involved in, a very important piece. And I don't know if Mark, if you can have mastered the rules of the Democratic Party, God bless you, because I don't think that's really humanly possible.
I thought I had for 5 minutes. I thought I had that illusion.
It's far over my head. I'll tell you, every time I look into it, there are people like Pamela Drake and other delegates, Pam Price, who have been on the Central Committee forever and are like driven to their wits' end by all the various and sundry rules, much less the state party. So I am very impressed that you all have, along with our help, hopefully, from Wellstone and other organizations and community members who spoke up. I'm very impressed that the Central Committee of the Democratic Party has adopted this resolution, because I will tell you, a few years back, that would never have been the case. And so I think it has now become the leading voice within the Democratic Party locally in the East Bay, at least, and if not in the Bay Area, for stopping this horrendous mass murder and genocidal acts of Israel and taking a stand for peace. So I want to answer your question, but I want to answer also what I think the most important thing for resolutions such as this to be saying are some of the things that Johanna said before, which are, first and foremost, what's going to unify and build a mass movement in this country is going to be the call for ceasefire. That is something that it is a form of humane that Biden and others who are in the Democratic Party, our entire Senate, will not call for. It's just completely immoral and unbelievable at the same time it is believable. So that is, and stopping military aid to Israel, which is the basic foundation of their ability to oppress and colonialize the Palestinians, is another key central demand in there, and part of the resolution that I think in every resolution should be there, as well as drawing out the context of why history did not start on October 7th. And that, to point out occupation, apartheid, and, and overreaction and mass murder that has been over the years. As to how to build a mass movement, which is what we do, first and foremost, be focused on that. I think that is trying to do everything we can in this particular context with this resolution, move it on to the Democratic Party of the state, and try to get other local entities as well to be adopting similar resolutions, just as Richmond did. We have one coming up in front of the Oakland Unified School Board on Wednesday, trying to move this conversation and trying to bring it to media attention, participate in the push, the mass marches that are happening, and demonstrations that are happening in the streets. But within this context, push people like Bernie Sanders, who gave the impetus to this organization to become more outspoken than they have. I'm going to stop because it's too much time and turn it over to my friend, Clyde. Go ahead, Clyde.
Thank you. I would second everything that David said. But I'm here. I also want to point out that the stuff that Johanna said and the stuff that I've experienced when these resolutions have been introduced, both at the Democratic Central Committee and at the Richmond City Council, none of the opposition takes on the issues. What they do instead is put up procedural barriers that Johanna was talking about, and here I am speaking because I am here representing Jewish Voice for Peace, or they simply declare that this is an anti-Semitic resolution. And they do not take on the issue of ethnic cleansing. They do not take on the issue of collective punishment because they can't. And that's why it's so important that we have these resolutions in as many places as possible, that we're out in the streets raising the issue so that more and more people recognize the truth, because no one is denying it. They're just trying to block people from saying it. And so I encourage all of us to do everything we can to get that word out to as many different people as possible. Obviously, the people on this call, and thank you very much for including me on this call, I don't have to persuade you. And I don't think I have to persuade a lot of people. I mean, the stuff about that Johanna was saying about these are war crimes, whether they're war crimes or under international law or not, we all have a moral compass, and we can see that bombing children, bombing mosques, bombing schools, bombing hospitals is wrong. And telling people that they have to leave their homes and bombing them when they try to is wrong. And that's the word that we need to get out. Thank you.
Thank you all. I've never seen as much movement on this issue than what I've been seeing in the past 3 weeks, for obvious reasons. And it's forced a lot of dialogue and conversation about something that has never been fully discussed in the American arena, as far as I can see. And the question that I think we're all thinking about, or some of us are thinking about, is how does this impact the Democratic Party as a whole? And how will it impact the 2024 presidential election? And for anyone who wants to take on that rather large cosmic question, the floor is yours. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'll just start. I'm very concerned that this is going to become a splitting issue. It is already a splitting issue, and that we are going to be, I read in Minnesota and Michigan as one example that the Biden poll numbers have like plummeted from 60% area to 17% or something like that. That's just because in the Muslim American community, which could have been critical for his win in the past, and this is going to continue and grow. And I cannot understand the calculus of the Democratic Party in terms of just politics, much less morality, which of course is abhorrent, the morality of the situation, what Clyde was talking about, what's wrong and what's right. But yeah, I think we have to be able, however, to walk and chew gum at the same time and face the complicated issue that we do not want to also have Trump be elected as a result of our abhorrence of this policy that Biden is taking. But we have to, do everything within our power to move the Senate. It reminds me of the beginning of the Vietnam War, when we were in great minority, and eventually the Senate and the legislatures came over because there was mass movement. And that's what we have to do now, even though it will have a bad effect in the Democratic Party in certain ways.
Anybody else want to speak to the question?
Well, I raised my hand.
Pamela, we'll get to Pamela. Okay, go ahead. We'll let you
well, I did write a
minutes.
Substack on this very topic. It's called Gaza and the 2024 election. And I said basically what David has just said, but particularly Ellie Mistal also wrote a very good one in The Nation. It talks about the fact that young people in this country already are not enthusiastic about Biden. They were not. They maybe, I don't think they listened to his speeches where he is pretty clear in terms of other policies, but they think of him as a doddering old man, and they think of Trump as another doddering old man. So there's two things that come out of that. That is, one, that, if he does something else like what he's doing right now and supporting this genocide, they may stay away from the polls. But the other thing that's really important that people don't realize, they're the foot soldiers. You don't just need people to vote, you need people to get out the vote. People are not going to vote without foot soldiers out there getting people to the polls. So this is really serious. And yesterday I went to the march, I posted one picture and something about the comparison between what they said to LBJ about how many kids have you killed today, saying now to Biden. And I got so much pushback from all my friends that are old Democratic Party people, including a former city attorney for Oakland. And then they just talked about how terrible Hamas was. And they said, well, it's just stupid if people can't see how they have to vote. Well, you can't convince people that, oh, this is a terrible choice, but you got to make a terrible choice. And that's why we're going to get you to get out to vote. It doesn't work like that. So I think people really need to talk honestly about how we can not elect Trump, but still be serious about listening to people and their concerns and about moving the situation. I get so much pushback. You should see my Facebook. There's like 50 responses to my one posting that picture from that. And so many of them feel like I'm somehow at fault because I'm saying this out loud.
Okay, well, we should always be sensitive to the fact that this issue raises historical trauma in a lot of different communities. And we should always recognize that not everyone is at the place that we are at. And I should remind people, I fear in 2024, we're going to be looking at turnout numbers along par with 2016, maybe a little bit ahead. And that puts us in a very dangerous position, puts Democrats in a very dangerous position. Remember that Hillary Clinton won Minnesota by less than 1 percentage point, and she lost Michigan. And this was pretty devastating, Electoral College speaking. Of course, Hamas is horrible, but one war crime does not justify other war crimes. And it's very interesting to me. American liberals who recognize the threat and danger of Donald Trump some of them won't recognize the equally hateful, corrupt demagogue in Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu has been a war criminal for decades. He's been a cynical enabler of theocratic thugs. And if he was not overseeing extremist military action, he would be in jail for corruption. This is an easy person for the United States to distance themselves from and to be able to say that his policies are not good for Israelis, not good for the United States, and certainly not good for Palestinians. And the unwillingness to say that has been shocking to a lot of young people. I see a lot of hands up. I'm going to get to all of you. Luana, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to speak to a few points and then pass it back to you so you can invite more questions. So there were, as I mentioned, like over 350 community members who spoke in favor of our resolution at these various hearings and then signed on their names onto the resolution. And people spoke very personally about their life stories and why they stand strongly against genocide right now, whether they're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, or not. The other piece that was really important that people said is, hey, I'm a Democrat, and I don't think I'll be able to vote a Democrat again this election unless the Democratic Party does something, unless you all do something right now, right? And if it's not for moral reasons, I certainly hope that some of the elected leaders, at least locally, are going to listen to what their constituents want and stand strong in support of a ceasefire, in support of ending genocide, so that they don't, lose votes. The other piece I want to name is that and I know this is a big debate about the Democratic Party that I hope that the rest of the speakers continue, but the pieces that I don't want to lose as next steps here is that many of us right now, Aliza, Austin, some other folks probably on this call, are organizing really hard to get the city of Oakland to pass a resolution in support of a ceasefire that uses language as strong as the language in our resolution. Aliza just posted in the chat an organizing guide that was created by a few brilliant people that's going to call on all of you to call on your city council members and ask them to take a stand on this issue. There's going to be a city council meeting this Tuesday at 4 p.m. We're going to have a rally before that at 3:30. And even if there's no resolution on the agenda, we want people to make public comment on this issue so that our council members can understand this is not something that can be swept under the rug. This is not something that can be avoided. We need the city of Oakland to stand strong like Richmond did in this critical moment in history. And then from then on, I know maybe some of you are going to be at the California Democratic Party convention in Sacramento. What fun. Let's organize. We're going to do something there. The community is going to do lots there. So let those of us who are elected officials who have, multiple roles to play, let's stand with the community and follow their lead and tell our party you cannot avoid and ignore the voices of the people. And let's see. What else was I going to say? I think that is it for now. And Aliza will have more questions and perhaps more that she can share about the next steps. Oh yeah, with the city of Oakland. Last thing I would just want to mention, there are some folks who completely disagree with the facts and the evidence as we have presented in this resolution. But there are many folks who agree with it, but just do not have the courage to take a stand when their political careers are quote unquote on the line, or when they're going to feel political repercussions. So it is our job to invite our elected officials into a place of courage exactly right now, the kind of courage that Madame D.A. Price has. Even though she's facing so much opposition right now, she wasn't afraid to stand with us because she knows that's what's right. So we have to ask all of our elected officials to do what's right. Thank you.
Alana, thank you for that. I before we go to questions from our attendees, I'm going to go to Aliza Kazmi, who is going to ask some of her own questions and make some pointed organizing tips for all of us. Aliza, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Eliza, as was mentioned, and I used to be the advocacy manager at CARE San Francisco Bay Area. I've done a lot of organizing civic engagement work with our local Muslim and BIPOC community and communities like that all around the country. So first, I just really want to second comments like Joanna and Austin and DA Price, and I believe it was Pamela. We cannot take for granted the long-term impacts of this moment. And I know everybody here, or most of us, seem to be on the same page about that, but it's just, so it just grates on my nerves that we're sitting here talking about basically political power for elected leaders when our government has just helped killed over 10,000 humans, including over 4,000 children. And unfortunately, the conversation we have to have is like, okay, what's going to get people to do the right thing? Talk to them about how their seat is at stake for whatever elected office that they hold. Like, it's so frustrating. But I think beyond that, what I am really trying to let sink in as we continue this work for Oakland and for our local community, including pushing the resolution in Oakland, hopefully, is how important the intergenerational, multiracial, interfaith coalition building is, not just right now, but for the future. So as a Muslim, I am so grateful to all of the anti-Zionist Jewish folks who have been loud, who have been leading, and who have been really just unrelenting. We could not be doing whatever we're doing that's making any kind of progress right now, just as Muslims and Arabs, or even just as Jews, right? Like, we all need to be working together. And so what I would ask is, who do we think are the pockets of our community that we really need to be tapping into right now? Like, maybe people have ideas about youth or, advocates on specific issues. Like, we know, like DA Press was saying, this issue of the genocide in Gaza directly connects to our community, whether you're talking about policing, whether you're talking about housing, whether you're talking about health. There's so many connections. So what do we think, as we reflect on the past couple of weeks, are the key segments of our community that we really need to mobilize, especially in Oakland, where there is already such powerful organizing happening? And I'll pause there, but also happy to keep talking to folks, and I'll put my email in the chat.
Very good. Thank you for that. I think with that, I'm going to open up the floor to questions. And again, for all panelists who feel moved to speak, go ahead and jump in to answer any of these questions forthcoming. Gordon, you are first. Gordon, go ahead.
Yes, I've been hearing concerns expressed about how Jewish Americans feel that the left is abandoning them. And at this point in time, I'm concerned about that. And the Democratic Party and the progressive movement has been a traditional home. And I would hate to see that home dry up for the Jewish folks. And also, I don't want to see it dry up or cease to be for Islamic Americans either. We're here, and we should be able to work together over here. And I'll just make a point that Igor Trigger made some comments. I put them on a Word document and I posted them to chat. So if you're curious about that and you feel you've lost the opportunity, they've been summarized. Yield.
I'd like to respond to that about the Jewish community. I think it's really important to understand that the Jewish Community Relations Council, which is opposing all of these resolutions, doesn't speak for the Jewish community. That the views within the Jewish community are changing. Since this whole thing started a month ago, JVP Bay Area has gotten 100 new members and 4,000 new people following our Instagram feed. There are people who want to know what we're thinking, and we're telling them what we're thinking. And especially among young Jews in America, there is not a Zionist call going out to support Israel. That isn't what's happening. So when we talk about what's going to happen to the Jewish left or to Jews in the left, we are stressing to the whole left that there is no such thing as progressive except for Palestine, that a progressive view must be supporting Palestine at this point and opposing the Zionist regime in Israel. And that is what we need to be talking about. And that is, in fact, what JVP needs to be talking about when we go out to the Jewish community and talk to our families and our congregations about what we're doing. Because as I said, the truth is pretty persuasive. And it is only the reticence to change that we are up against. I'm done.
Anyone else would like to comment from our panel? Okay. Next up.
Actually, one other thing I want to say.
Go ahead.
When we talk about the Jewish community, there is also the Jewish money community. And in fact, a lot of that has already turned Republican a long time ago.
Yeah. Sheldon Adelson.
My good friend, Mark. Mark, go ahead. You are on the roster.
Thanks so much. I actually would like to make more of a comment than a question, and I hope you'll bear with me here for just a minute. I'm coming to you as a practicing Jewish American here in Berkeley, somebody who strongly supports a ceasefire, supports into the occupation, and in a situation of future where Jews and Palestinians can live side by side in what is now Israel-Palestine. I've written my members of Congress asking them to do a ceasefire and all that. That being said, I do want to speak to this issue of Jews feeling the left has abandoned them that has been brought up, and the historical trauma that Mark mentioned. And I can't emphasize enough how traumatic it was for many people in our community to see right after the 1,400 were slaughtered, people posting stuff immediately, not even recognizing that these terrible loss of innocent life, many of whom were peace activists, that people being held hostage, but just immediately going towards almost celebratory or other posting unrelated to that issue. And that's what a concern I have with this resolution, not the fact that there's a resolution calling for a ceasefire, which I support, but how it is written in a way that doesn't take into account the preciousness of Jewish lives have been lost too. And that's not to say that we need to, that we shouldn't do a ceasefire. I totally support that. And I would support a resolution calling for that. But I'm looking at the way this thing's written. There's only a passing reference to the 1,400 Jewish people or Israelis who were killed. And it puts it in a saying they were killed, whereas it says the Palestinians were murdered. It mentions, it quantifies the number of Palestinian children, which is horrible, who have been killed. And I know people who have family in Gaza who have been killed. It's horrific, but it doesn't mention the Jewish children that were killed. It mentions war crimes, and Mark made a great point saying that one war crime doesn't justify another one, but also the one war crime doesn't excuse another one. And what Hamas has done is horrific. And makes no mention of that. And the resolution makes no mention of the condition of hostages or anything other than a passing mention that they exist. And so I want to put this in the context of sort of the reaction that a lot of people that I know, I don't speak for the whole Jewish community just as much as anybody else does, but I'm just telling you how I've been impacted and kind of feel in terms of where can I go to speak out against what's happening? And you know, anti-Semitism is increasing, and I know Islamophobia is also increasing, and we're in for some really rough times. And I think we need to be very careful in the way that we're writing these things to make sure that we're bringing people together around a common goal. Instead of, I didn't know about this resolution in advance, I would have weighed in. Maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. There were hundreds of people who were making comments. But, you know, there's a petition currently circulating in Berkeley schools by parents whose students have been subject to anti-Semitic slurs. I just saw a billboard defaced when I drove down Telegraph. You know, there's a constant, there's an increasing report of these kind of anti-Semitic attacks. And I think it's important that we you're thinking about how are we going to bring a broad coalition together to create a ceasefire, or what are we going to do to bring Jews into this coalition? I think writing things like this that don't take into account the full humanity of everybody, I think impacts that. And I think that's not doesn't help us get where we need to go. So I appreciate the spirit of calling for a ceasefire. I totally support that. But I do think it's really important to look at how these things are written and the impact that it could have on people reading it, perceiving it, and if you're trying and coming into this discussion. So anyway, that's my 2 cents for what it's worth. And anyway, thanks.
Mark, those 2 cents are worth a lot, and I want to thank you for making those comments and making that statement. And I think this is something worth probing. I open up to the panel. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what Mark just said.
May I start, Mark?
Absolutely.
Sorry, other Mark. Mark Schlossberg, thank you so much for naming what you just named. I am sorry that you personally felt like your pain was not recognized after the Hamas murder of 1,400 Israelis. I personally stand against anti-Semitism and stand for life, no matter where it's happening and how it's happening. And the way we wrote this resolution was an attempt to do 2 things. One, acknowledge the pain that is present on both sides, right? We named specifically the ACDCC condemns the recent murder of civilians, including by Israel in Gaza, Israeli armed sweaters in the West Bank, and by Hamas in Israel. And then we named the number of people killed. Obviously, there's still changes to those numbers. The second thing that we try to do, and I think I'm still learning and growing in my capacity to talk about these issues, is that there is a power imbalance here. The Israeli government has more power than the Palestinian people, both by military, politically, socially, in almost every single way. So if we're going to ever get to peace, we have to push the Israeli government to be willing to come to the negotiating table. So we have to name the crimes that the Israeli government is committing, and we have to call on the international community to stand united against those crimes so that we can get to a peace, the pathway to peace, whatever that looks like, which needs to be determined by the parties who are involved. And so it is that power complete, and when I say imbalance, it's huge, right? Like the power imbalance is tremendous. And it's that power differential that we have to address. And I feel like that's what the resolutions or statements that are like, well, there's harm on both sides, or we acknowledge there's pain on both sides, that they don't do. They don't take into account the systemic oppression that has been in place for a long time, right? And we as people who are standing for progressive values, who are trying to take down systems of oppression, to me, we have to name that clearly, even when it's hard. And even in imperfect ways. There's a lot more that I wish I could have put in that resolution that doesn't fit into 400 words. And I just want to, again, this is where I stand. I would love to hear from the rest of the panelists. And I'm here for you specifically if you want to have further conversations on this topic. I think it's really important that we have these conversations and do not shy away from the difficulty and the pain that's here. And trauma trauma needs to be tended to. And we as a society haven't learned how to tend and take care of trauma yet, which is, I think, part of what we're witnessing right now. People are responding from a traumatic place and therefore are not able to necessarily see the bigger picture because they're reacting to their own trauma.
David and Clyde, I see that your hands are up. David, go ahead.
Well, I agree with Jana and everything she's just said, including the fact that we have to be very sensitive to each other and our feelings about this. In the Jewish community, there are a lot of different feelings, and as Clyde was pointing out, no one group of Jews speaks for all. But I think every resolution that gets passed and that we should be participating in, including the one that just got passed by the Alameda County Democratic Central Committee, has to say what it said, which is that there has to be empathy, sympathy expressed towards the Jewish community and towards the Israelis who lost their lives through the war crimes that were committed by Hamas, and say it very clearly. I don't know about, I also agree with Yana that there's false equivalence when we don't take the context into account and talk about the 75 years of oppression here and of removing Palestinians from their homeland and murdering them in the process and keeping an apartheid system and all those actions. That is a huge part of this context and governs what a lot of people's reactions are. So that also has to be in these resolutions, and sometimes that makes people feel uncomfortable. And Mark, you talk about didn't say enough about murdering children in Israel versus murdering children in Palestine. I think those are worthwhile discussions, and I appreciate you bringing them up. But I'll tell you what's the overall thing happening right now is that there's mass murder being committed in our name as American citizens. And that, to me, is the first and foremost thing we have to address.
Thank you, David. Clyde, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much the same thing as David is saying. I think the two things that are really important is to say the clock didn't start on October 7th. And that's why the paragraph in the resolution about the historical context is so important, is to say this isn't just something that happened across the border a month ago. This is actually a plan that has been going on for years and years. It is an enterprise. And the discussion of ethnic cleansing has been going on for a while. That didn't start on October 7th. The statements that the Israeli government. And it is very important to me that it is being done in my name and with my money as an American taxpayer. And those are the things that I can influence. I certainly condemn what happened on October 7th. I spent this morning in an email conversation with a very dear friend on a kibbutz in Israel, and she is freaked out. She is a progressive from California who doesn't know where to go at this point and is frightened. And that fear strikes me to the core. But I understand that we are not simply in an instant right now. We are in a historical context, and it's important for us to act in the ways that we can to influence this government not to continue to support what's going on there.
Thank you for that. Austin, go ahead.
I second what Yana had to say. The fact is, when I hear anti-Semitism, why there's double standards. There's double standards. Why? When I wrote my resolution 2 years ago, I was called Israeli hater. I was called, oh, you hate Israel. But how come when I talk about Palestine, I have to talk about Palestine human rights? I can't just talk about I'm pro-Palestinian. Oh, you're pro-Palestinian. There were 150 people on the call 2 years ago that said some nasty things. I was bullied at the convention by two rabbis, another person, because I said I was anti-Zionist. They cornered me. They called me all kinds of names. And I was like, shameful. It's shameful. Because did we ask to pay $2 billion a day on the genocide? Checkpoints. Let me ask you, would you like to be on checkpoints? Settlements after settlements. It's like people on the West Bank, my friends, are getting harassed. People are being threatened. It's ridiculous. And Israel has never been held accountable. Out of 435 people, the members of Congress, only 23 have the nerve to even speak out. In the Senate, there's probably none. The fact is, that there's double standards. People call anti-Semitism. I'm against anti-Semitism, but when you cry anti-Semitism every second, you can't cry wolf every minute of the day. Why do we have to it's like everything that you don't like, people don't like, it's anti-Semitic, you're anti-Semitic, you're anti-Semitic. It's like, it is shameful. Shame on us, because you know what, in our name, shame on us, because it is progressive except for Palestine. And please don't direct your messages to me. Direct it to the chair of our revolution. That's really offensive. Don't even try to. So that's what I'm trying to say. We would not be here if we were not paying billions of dollars to Israel. That is the problem. And the narrative is one-sided. It is one-sided. It is ridiculous and shameful, and is one-sided. If I could say it a million times, one-sided. People are dying every second of right now. And we could just be speaking about this. And we want to talk about it in 5 days ago, 10 days ago, a rally next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It is disgusting and sickening to me. And I would not compromise. I would not compromise, because the thing is, Palestinians have been suffering 75 years. And my friends are in checkpoints, are in settlements. They can right to return. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Austin. Najeen, go ahead.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. As an Iranian American and someone who has lived through 156 Scud missiles in Tehran at the end of the Iran-Iraq War, another time when the US sponsored and was supporting the wrong side, giving arms to Saddam to bomb the people of Iran. We were under chemical weapons attacks, bombs, and all of this was funded by the US. And then they decided to do the same thing to Saddam and in Iraq. So these things happen because our foreign policy is one-sided. It is based on a very extractive model and a colonialist model, a framework where people of those regions do not have the destiny in their own hands. They don't have self-determination. The Palestinian people they basically can only be talked about in the third person. They can't decide things for their own fate. And that is the reason there is such a thing as Hamas. Hamas is funded by and supported by the Jewish state, by other forces that were afraid of Fatah. Fatah was an organization that was militant, but it was not Islamist. They've always supported the far-right Islamists as a policy because they are afraid of the socialists and communists coming to power in those regions. I don't know what to say except that 10,000 Palestinian children are taken hostage are taken prisoner every year. Every year, think about this. They end up, thousands and thousands of children are in those prisons, people under the age of 18. This didn't start on October 7th. This started way before. I'm sorry, not 10,000, 800. Every year, children. Hamas it was trying to take some hostages. We don't even know what happened in the crossfire. The Israeli government is not concerned about those hostages. They're not concerned about the hostages they're killing with their own bombs. It is their policy that they don't care about those hostages. This is the problem. Maybe Hamas had an idea to try to bring some of those children back. 99.9% of those children end up going to prison for many, many years for doing nothing, for throwing a rock. This is where we're at right now. Our one-sidedness has brought us to this stage because of colonialism, because of imperialism, and because of the US international foreign policy always being on the wrong side. It's good for business.
Thank you, Najeen. Sarah, please go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you all and to hear what you have to say. I'm very much in agreement with a lot of the sentiments. The question I have is, I'd appreciate some insights about I'm going to say logic, and that may be the wrong word, but the spending energy on trying to get this resolution passed in lots of forums versus just coming together on here are the things we need to see happen. Changing the government in Israel, ceasefire, and not just a ceasefire, but let's actually see lasting change. The killing stops today and we make sure it doesn't start again tomorrow. Those are complicated policy things, but there are great minds in this call. And I'm wondering, is there logic in having a focus on that and then pushing that more than having fight after fight at various local jurisdictions about the resolution?
Well, that's a very good question. David, I see your hand up. Make tangible to all of us the weight, the worthiness of this resolution and what it means. Does it make a statement from the community? Does it move the Democratic Party? What is the importance of this resolution? David, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is one part of a much larger struggle, and that it is worthwhile to bring to all of our public forums the idea that this is where our democracy can be used. Our democracy can be used to make resolutions in city councils, in the Senate, in the Assembly, in state Assembly, the state Senate, the U.S. Senate, and so forth. This is where citizens can speak up. These local ones, like the Alameda County Central Committee, Democratic Party, the local city council is where you can actually speak and something can be heard by our elected leaders. So I think every one of those forums is important to be raising voices, in addition to being out in the streets, in addition to all the, I think going after the media is a really critical piece of this. Like, they are so biased and one-sided. I am like having rebuttals in my mind going on to every time I listen to anything like CNN or MSNBC or the New York Times or the East Bay Times or any of these things. The framing of the problems is so one-sided that alone could be a project. And if anybody is going to speak up and be there, that would be good way to build the mass movement that has to move our country to change its policies. This is just one piece, but it's an important way for people to speak out.
Sarah, thank you for. Oh, Oana, please go ahead.
Yeah, I double click on every single thing that David said. This is one strategy among many. How can we influence the foreign policy of the United States? Right? How do we even get to that? And one thing that's happening that is critical is creating a consciousness shift. The thousands of people who are marching on the streets, thousands of people who are writing, who are educating others about this issue, who are saying, hey, words matter. Let's call things as they are. Let's face reality in the face, are changing consciousness. They're changing the consciousness of many other people. Jewish Voices for Peace standing up and said, not in my name, is changing the consciousness, right, of others. And so we rely on that movement that's happening right now, and then we call our elected officials to make a statement as well. I do believe that when the Alameda County Democratic Central Committee passed that resolution, it makes a tiny little bit of a difference. This is why we're having this conversation right now with all of you, and all of you all are going to go to your other places and continue to have these conversations. If we can get more central committees to pass this resolutions like this one around the state, maybe we can actually get to the California Democratic Party, where we're going to be shut down over and over and over again. But when thousands of people show up in support, we can shift that policy. And if we can get to the California Democratic Party, maybe we can get to the National Democratic Party. And so, yeah, it's just a tiny little step, but it creates an important momentum. And I really hope that we can continue to have these conversations, and each of you are already doing so in your own lives, including trying to talk to the media, who did not at all report on our resolution. We've been trying to get in touch with Crown 4. We've been trying to get in touch with ABC 7. Nobody's interested in this moment, in what we did. Why? Because does not fit the narrative that they want to put out, to the people. So let's continue to think through how we can get the media involved in a more in the real conversation about what's happening.
Thank you for that. That is shocking. That is shocking. How many comments was there? How many thousands? How many thousands of people were there? Yeah,
different meetings, over 500 people.
Clyde, go ahead, please. Clyde, I think you're muted.
This morning's Chronicle had a huge picture of Civic Center with nobody in it, because they wrote a story about Civic Center that had nothing to do with the march yesterday, and they had no story about the march yesterday. It's a choice they made. What I wanted to say is that even in these times when we're passing all these resolutions and we're having marches and we're seeing marches in cities throughout the world, we can't think that this is an easy job, and it's going to take a long time. When Sarah mentioned the children who are in Israeli prisons, there are hundreds of children in Israeli military prisons who have been put in prisons that are run by the Israeli military in the West Bank. And when Representative McCollum introduced a bill to cut off funding for that action 6 years ago, there were 15 people who signed on to it. She has introduced the same bill in every Congress, and this year I think there are 36 people who are signed on to it. So there's progress being made. Things are changing, but it's going to take a long time, and that's why it's so important that we say we're going to do this in every way we can. And that's why these resolutions are important, is to have this conversation going on in as many places as possible. Thanks.
I think it's really powerful for all of us to say, for all these war crimes, these crimes against humanity, that we say, not in our name, not with our money. And if you do this, you're doing this without our consent, without our complicity, without our support. I think that's a powerful thing for Americans to be saying at this moment. At this moment, just to stay on schedule, we're going to hear from Cynthia just real quick. She's going to give us a rundown of things that are happening around the Bay Area around this issue. I'm going to open up the floor to her, and then I'm going to go back to questions from our attendees. So indulge us. Cynthia, please go ahead. Let us know what's happening, where we need to be.
Okay. I recommend to everyone, thank you for inviting this. I recommend to everyone that they go to indiebay.org, which has a calendar of actions in the Bay Area, always. And I've posted in the chat what they have for this week. If you do go to Indie Bay, and I've got a link there, each of these actions is described in detail. I'll highlight a couple things. There's nothing like what happened on Saturday coming up this week. But locally, well, daily at noon, the Jewish Voice for Peace Power Half Hour, where you can join hundreds of other people around the country who are talking about and taking action around the issue in Palestine. On the 6th, Jewish Solidarity with Palestine, it's a Zoom at 3 p.m. The next day, November 7, Oakland Against Genocide at 3 p.m. And that is, I believe, the city council meeting, which is an in-person rally and attending the city council meeting. Tuesday night, Code Pink is holding its monthly Code Pink Congress Capitol Calling Party. We hear from experts on topics, and then we take action together. We make phone calls. On the 8th, a Gaza teach-in with Jewish Voice for Peace. On the 9th, Global Indigenous Solidarity with Palestine at 4:30 p.m. And that's another in-person action. And then on the 9th, the Answer Coalition link will show you more details about a global shutdown for Palestine. They're basically inviting people to walk out of work, not shop, whatever creative actions you can take, but there'll be more details posted there. Okay, thanks.
Cynthia, thank you so much for that. And I see that you put that information in the chat. Everyone, make sure you take a look at those dates and those events. We're going to go back to questions. Matthew Lewis, go ahead, Matthew. Matthew, if you can hear.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yeah, so like Mark, I'm gonna have more of a comment than a question. And I guess it's actually two comments. One is actually a kind of a response to what Mark Schlossberg, not Mark Van Landwit, said, and my thoughts as a Jewish American. I really want to kind of I can't quote, but I'm going to paraphrase what Gail McLaughlin said when a very similar resolution was passed about a week earlier at the Richmond City Council, which was that what we see in the media is essentially a blacklisting of or boycotting of bringing attention to Palestinian deaths and to the voices that are arguing.
Matthew, we just lost you.
Can't hear you, Matthew.
Yeah, Matthew, we can't hear you.
I will fix my audio and then I'll be back in like 30
seconds.
Hear
you now. Get it in now. We can hear you now. Get it in now.
It says my internet come back to me.
All right, Matthew. Raphael, go ahead. You are up next.
Great. So I've got some points of concern that, some of my friends in the Jewish American community have brought up in regards to resolutions like this and, other resolutions using the language of genocide in particular. And while I think that, we can definitely say that there's a risk of ethnic cleansing going on, but there's certainly collective punishment going on with the cutting off of food and water and electricity and fuel and internet to Gaza, that when we use the term genocide, it can play into anti-Semitic tropes, even if that's not our intent in using that term. Like if we're saying, oh, it's Jewish money behind everything, that's obviously an anti-Semitic trope, So, and I guess the other thing is, ultimately, what's our long-term goal here? Are we advocating for a ceasefire? Are we advocating for an Israeli state and a Palestinian state? Are we advocating for a binational state? Are we advocating for the end of the Zionist project and the removal of the Jewish population in Palestine? Like, those are three different things. And the reactions of, the Jewish community in Israel and elsewhere would understandably vary quite a bit, depending on which we're ultimately working towards. So I think it's important that we take care in what language we use and that we consider what ends we're working towards. Thank you.
Any of the panelists would like to tackle that? I don't see any. I can only speak personally. There's been over 2,000 children murdered in the last 3 weeks. That's the first thing that I know of. And I know that Israel is now in the grips of something that I saw happen in the United States after September 11th. People can be pushed to do terrible things when they have fear, jingoism, propaganda, and dehumanization. Terrible things can happen. And right now, we should not be enabling those aspects. We should be, if anything, saying, take a moment and pause. Napoleon said, whatever your enemy wants you to do, don't do it. All this talk about human shields. Netanyahu and Likud use Israelis as human shields to keep them out of jail. And the kind of talk, the kind of dehumanizing talk I've heard about people in Gaza, a very small area, 2.3 million people in an area 25 miles long, 5 miles wide, one of the most densely populated areas on the planet. And what is happening in Gaza is a collective punishment, which is a war crime. The blockade that Israel is doing to Gaza is a form of collective punishment in of itself. These are people without any hope, any future. Think of the desperation. Think of the rage for their own lives, their own families, the rage and fury. Every building that it gets bombed creates another 20 to 30 new terrorists. The historical irony of this collective punishment would be comical if it wasn't so tragic. And I say this as someone who, both sides of my family were in concentration camps. One side for being Jewish in Northern Europe, the other for being Japanese in California. I've seen what this rage, I've seen what this injustice can do, and this circle of blood. Somebody has to say stop. And if it can't be, and it should be us as a patron of this in this moment. So the long-term, very important questions that you asked. I don't want to make light of them, but the immediate question right in front of us is a moral question that should be pretty easy to answer. We need to call for a ceasefire. We need to demand it. I think we're the only people of power that could do so. That's my thoughts. I open up to the panel.
Just let me say one thing about the use of the term genocide. I think it definitely can be applied. There's genocidal actions going on right now. And I don't think that genocide, I understand the emotion of Jews who believe that that is a term that is exclusive to the genocide that was being committed against Jews in World War II by Nazi Germany. And I understand and feel sympathy with that, but it is not reserved for Jews. It is a term that has a legal meaning. And I think that using that term, we have to educate people about why that is actually applicable in this situation. And we, Jews, do not want to be doing the same thing that was done to us, not in our name.
Thank you for that. Bill, go ahead. You're up next.
Most of my comments are going to touch on things that people have previously said, including Nagin's terrific piece on the settler colonialist history, and particularly David and Clyde's comments earlier about what's going to happen with Muslim votes coming up. And I just want to put full disclosure out there at the beginning. I do not, in fact, belong to the Democratic Party and have not for quite a long time. I tend to re-register for primary elections when there's a progressive that I want to vote for. But once it gets past that, I re-register back as an independent. And I think I'm offering myself as a cautionary tale here, because I did not vote for Joe Biden when he was up in 2020. In fact, I wrote in Bernie Sanders on my ballot. And I will not be voting for Joe Biden under any circumstances if he's the nominee in 24. And I want to, I'm going to put in the chat a link to an article that happened to come up on my email feed for In These Times magazine regarding somebody who, as an Arab American, is saying that they are through voting for the lesser of two evils, which has been my approach now for years, and why, in fact, I declined to vote for Joe Biden and for any number of other Democrats who likewise have failed to break the mold of being really essentially just another lighter type of Republican on so many issues, including this one. And I speak, by the way, as somebody who was raised in an Orthodox Jewish family, although I have not practiced any religion for about 55 years, but have known and have been an anti-Zionist for about that same 55 years. So I'm just going to put this in the chat and let you think about what the answer is for getting people to realize that there is going to be a loss of votes for Democrats based on what we see and what we know is wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Our friend Paola, go ahead. You're up next. If you can hear us, we can't hear you.
Hi there. Sorry about that. It's kind of hard. Hey, everybody. My comment is in regards to the vote, the actual vote that we had on Wednesday. I just want to say that, you know, I don't know if people noticed, but Igor Tregub, the chair of the Alameda County Central Committee, was on this call earlier. Igor voted no. He voted for the motion that would have passed, would have tabled this resolution until January. Fortunately, we had enough votes to push that back, and then he voted no for the resolution. I want to acknowledge, and we should be aware that as a Democratic Party, we need to be aware of which our elected officials voted in favor and voted against our resolution. And I want to call out the people who voted in favor, people who are elected, people who have voice. I want to point out that Elisa Marquez, County Board of Supervisor, voted in favor of it. I want to vote out that City Council member Victor Aguilar, who's also, you know, these are all people who are voted, who are members who can vote on the Alameda County Democratic Central Committee, voted in favor of this resolution. Our DA, Pamela Price, voted in favor of this resolution. And Alex Lee, an assembly member, voted in favor of this resolution. Congress Representative Barbara Lee abstained. She had a representative there and abstained. Eric Swalwell's representative, and he didn't show up. Buffy Wicks and her representative didn't show up. So it is very important, I believe, that we need to be aware, you know, why these people don't show up. Are they afraid? They just want to stay out of the fray. You know, if there is ever a time to stand up and hold your ground and give voice, this is the time. And so I want to applaud our DA, Pamela Price, Elisa Marquez, Alex Lee, and Victor Aguilar. And, you know, a lot of these folks are again going to be likely running for Alameda County Central Committee. So be aware and vote for those folks who voted yes, and vote no for the folks who voted no. Among them are our chair of the Alameda County Central Committee, Igor Tregub. Thank you.
People who don't show up. That line echoes around in my head a lot, particularly like this. Thank you for that. Thank you for that rundown. Yeah, not too many surprises there. Matthew, your audio is restored. Go ahead and go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I have two comments. First is in response to what Mark Schlossberg was saying earlier, my thoughts as a Jewish American on this. I really want to point to, I can't quote, so I'm going to paraphrase what Gail McLaughlin said when the Richmond City Council, when we passed a similar resolution about a week prior at the Richmond City Council, which was that, like, there is this blacklisting or boycotting, whatever, I don't remember the exact word, of pro-Palestinian voices. And that we need to be focused on those Palestinian voices who are, this is the first time they're being allowed to have their humanity spoken of. And that we're always able to hear about the dead Israelis, but never given the same credence to dead Palestinians. Even when it's ratios of like 10 to 1 dead Palestinians to Israelis, and when over half the population of Gaza is under 18. And so particularly when the resolution is only for whatever reason allowed to be one page, I think as a Jewish American, and more importantly as a human being, like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to focus more on the dead Palestinians. And as Nagin said, for instance, like the Hamas situation, it's just like talking about Hamas killed these people
it feels to me like it's not like, as Negin said, and it's been reported by numerous publications, like the Israeli government purposely funded Hamas and put them in power in order to try and fight the secular, less militaristic groups like Fatah. They didn't want, and so just talking about, oh, Hamas did this, Hamas did that. The Israeli government intentionally wanted that to happen. They intentionally, so that the opposition wouldn't be these more peaceful groups like Hamas. And so, to me, it just feels like we have to understand we are going to have attention drawn to dead Israelis no matter what, but we need to focus the attention on the dead Palestinians. And if it was not the case that we are always prevented and people are falsely smeared as anti-Semites for supporting Palestinians and saying that having Jews be safe does not require killing Palestinians, then maybe we could have had this resolution focus more on dead Israelis as well. But this is the first time we're finally able to pass things and on support of Palestine, and so we have to focus on the Palestinians. The second comment I want to make was a bit similar to Paula's of Igor voting against this. I want to quote what Pamela Price said earlier in this meeting, or I'm going to paraphrase. I can't quote her exactly, but don't look at what people say. Look at what they do. Igor likes to present himself as somebody progressive, but he's been wrong on this. He's done the bad thing on this issue and so many other things. I've had people who are working on this resolution tell me, for instance, that Igor didn't just vote against this and try to table it. He was actively lobbying people before the meeting, trying to tell them not to vote for this. And he's done this on other issues as well. He worked very hard we endorsed Negin for the rent board. He worked very hard to make sure that Negin didn't win that seat. And he tried to cost Ida her seat as well on the rent board. 2 years before that, when I was asking people at the Berkeley Rent Board Convention if they would support Palestine, Igor tried to stop me from being able to even ask people questions about that. I could go on and on, I don't know if Igor is one of the people who's bullying Austin, but I've had Igor bully me for standing up to him when he's done stuff. He bullied other people as well. Igor may have in the past been a progressive or may claim progressive values.
Excuse me, I'm interrupting. I'm interrupting this now. We are not here to make personal attacks.
Okay, I'll just then quote Pamela Price again, which is, we need to look not at what people say, but what they do. And if people, and this can go for multiple people in the so-called progressive movement, if their actions don't match their words, we shouldn't be inviting them to be in these spaces anymore. If they're going to change their attitude, then they change whether or not they're to be in here. Also, he also tried to stop Pamela. He worked to stop Pamela from getting endorsed by the Democratic Party.
All right.
So,
yeah.
I think we need to rethink some of these people we previously thought were friends, and that can apply to multiple people. So yeah, I just ask that we think about that.
Believe me, we're all making these judgments on who is showing up at this historic moment. We really are. All right. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for that. Always, always bringing it to the individuals. I appreciate that, Matthew. I really do, honestly. All right. With that, I am welcoming all of our panelists. If they have a closing statement they want to make, something that has not been said, that has been left unsaid, I want to give you the opportunity to say that now. And go ahead to anyone who wants to start. I could be very cruel and call on people. Clyde, go ahead, Clyde.
I just want to say that one of the things we often say in our JVP meetings and especially in the JVP National Legislative Organizing Committee meetings is this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's going to take us a long, long time. But what is happening now is urgent. It is critical. It is crisis. And so it is, at this point, maybe it is a sprint, that we have to do everything we can right now to arrange for a ceasefire in Israel-Palestine. Thanks.
Thank you, Clyde, so much. David, I'm going to call on you.
Just will agree with that, and I want to thank you all for doing the work, and hopefully everybody is going to get out and be bringing these resolutions, be out on the streets, and be writing letters to editors and anything else that will bring this horrifying mass murder to an end as quickly as possible and give us some room to start organizing for a better future.
Thank you, David. Austin, my very passionate friend. Austin, go ahead.
Thank you so much for having us here. Once again, this is the moment of truth. Once again, this is intersectional issue too. So when people are saying, why we have no money? Well, we have money for the billions of dollars to go to Israel. So we need to intersect in our lives, and we need to all call to ask for a ceasefire, definitely, and no more money to Israel. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. Ioana?
Yeah, I'll just add that to Raphael's point, I think we do have to condemn actual anti-Semitic attacks, and that doesn't mean that we have to shy away from calling out genocide when genocide is happening. We are in
they're also
absolutely,
talking about Israel.
we are in a moment in history when people's lives are on the line, and we cannot remain silent. I ask all of you to help us with the Oakland resolution, however long it takes. It's probably not going to be resolved this week. So you can email me or email Aliza if we put our emails in the chat. Remember that I'm sorry, I'm like, it's just been so much. Remember that we can do this. We actually can, so many folks have said that things feel impossible until they're done. We're actually in a tidal shift right now, and we have to do it.
Thank you for that. And thank you for all of you who are doing it and making it happen. And I am so grateful. I mean, I said this before, more children have been killed in the last 3 weeks in Gaza than have been killed in all the war zones for the last 3 years. This is a real crisis. And it's important for communities to say that, well, number one, that Benjamin Netanyahu is not the Jewish people. The Likud government is not the Jewish people. And we got to recognize the larger struggle. There are no rights that Palestinians have that the Israeli government cannot take away. There's no freedom of movement for Palestinians that the Israeli government does not dictate. There's no supply of water or energy that the Israeli government cannot turn off. And to see the sadness of this commentary, which is repulsing so many young people justifiably, where allies of Israel, they blame the people they are murdering for making them murder them. That's a moral degradation of the self that is unspeakable. And the larger questions about nationhoods and all that, nations don't have a right to exist, but human beings do. And that has to be our focus always. And thank you for this resolution. I want to thank all of these wonderful panelists. Ioana Tukleva, oh, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. David Weintraub, Clyde Leland, and of course, the outspoken and always forceful and passionate Austin Tam. Thank you so much for being here and talking about this resolution. Thank you for drafting this resolution and making this resolution happen. And history will be judging all of us. That's all I have to say. Thank you all for being at this meeting. Carol, is there any final announcements that need to be made? Is there anything
I know some of us need to be in another meeting and have to get out of here. And I just really, from the bottom of my heart, thank everybody who was here and everything that was discussed. It's been a tough few weeks, really, and it's not going to get better soon. And I feel like this might be the beginning, really, of like the anti-war movement in a big way, like I was involved with in the 60s. This is going to get big, and we have to stand up, and we're going to. And one other thing, we usually do announcements. We have one person, Cordell Hindler, who I would like, his hand is raised. I'd like him to make his announcement, and then we're out of here. Thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you, everybody. Cordell, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me, Carol?
Yep.
Yes, so I would like to invite Our Revolution East Bay to the Senior Winter Ball hosted by the Commission on Aging on December the 16th from 6 to 10 at the Richmond Auditorium. And tickets are only $40 a person. There will be food, there'll be dancing, and it should be a lot of fun. So hopefully Our Revolution East Bay, they can purchase a table if they want to. There's going to be some dancing too, and hopefully you all come, and I will forward the information in the chat.
Sounds like you're at some place where there's already dancing. Thank you, Cordell. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Everyone needs to leave for the next meeting. Really appreciate all of you being here. Thank you for this discussion. It's so important. Love to all of you. Love to all of you. Talk to you all soon. See ya.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night, everybody. And
Thanks.
thank you so much.
Thanks, Our Revolution.
Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you so much.